wrestling fans are a whole different caliber of fan. Like the best fans that I have, honestly, are wrestling fans. Like it's like a cult, like, following, which I love. Like I'm so grateful, like I said before, being accepted into that community because I knew that, going into it, like they're rabid. If you make a mistake or you come off as inauthentic or, even if you're like a heel or, they're rabid. They will take you down. But then also in the same breath, if they love you with their whole heart. Like that's why I love it so much because it's not just like watching a movie and going home. Like they're living and breathing this life. Like they're obsessive about it in such a beautiful way. Like the relationship between performing and wrestling and the fans is unlike anything that I've ever seen.
All right, Trendsetter, we're back with another episode of the HSP podcast, and today we got a great episode for you guys. We've got adult film actress and also delving into the pro wrestling scene too, which we're gonna get into it right away, and that is Misha Montana. You can follow on all our social media at the Misha Montana. How are you today? How is everything? You had a crazy weekend, so did we, but we're gonna delve into what you did this past weekend. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. I was really looking forward to being on this with you guys. So it was a crazy weekend. I know we've all had. It was just a wild, wild time. So I'm actually recovering from some of the injuries I sustained this weekend. So we'll jump into that for sure. But yeah, it's rough. Like you don't even realize like how torn up you are till like a day or two later. So it was pretty intense.
So what we're talking about is the XPW wrestling show in California this past weekend, Halloween in Hell 3. And you were a big part of it. I know you've done stuff with XPW, but was this the first time you actually got in the ring and actually got physical in the way that you did? Because, you took a light tube to the head. You obviously were proud of your scars and your blood, whatever. But is that really the first time you had like a match that physical?
That it was to that level. I've been in the ring before. I've done several like cat fights, and actually in the last match, Jasmine St. Clair hit me with a kendo stick. That was kind of the first like really physical experience that I've had in the ring with using weapons too. So, and the kendo stick is not fun either, but that was a small taste compared to the stuff that we did last weekend. I don't think anybody was expecting that because we kind of have been like slowly building and getting more physical, and I don't think anybody expected to see color on me, like which I've been planning on wanting to do that level of the physical caliber for a long, long time. So it's really just like it turned out beautifully, like the way everything was executed. I wanted it to be a surprise, especially for Halloween in Hell. I was wearing like a white wedding dress because that was my Halloween costume for being married to Schlack, and to get it just covered in blood, like. But that physical level, getting hit in the head with a chair, getting hit in the head for the first time with a light tube, obviously, like, and I've got glass in every single part of my body. Like my legs are cut completely up, like I probably have 50 cuts on my legs and hands and back. So that went from like tiny little physical spots and bumps to just like all out in like a small period of time.
So obviously, when you're a wrestling fan, if you see somebody in white, you kind of get the feeling that there's going to be some color involved too. But
So
listen,
should we expect some from you, Jeff, right now, since you got some
I
color
know
on?
I'm expecting like with this is going to be a hardcore deathmatch kind of
I'm
interview.
wearing red
So
too, so you know what?
It's on. It's on.
Yeah, and I don't like him anyway to begin with, so I wouldn't mind doing it the hard way, as they say in pro wrestling, on
yeah,
Jeff. So
yeah.
yeah.
How did that relationship start with XPW? Like, were you a fan? Is deathmatch your kind of niche? Is that something that you really were a fan of? Tell me how you started with XPW.
So it's kind of a random story. I got started in XPW because I knew who Rob Black was because obviously I'm in the adult entertainment world, and Rob owned, XPW. He also owned a very well-known adult company called Xtreme 20 years ago. And the Dark Side of the Ring episode came out, and I'm like obsessed with Dark Side of the Ring. And I knew about XPW and about Xtreme before, but I never thought in a million years that I would be involved to the way that I am now. I started off doing, like, Rob reached out to see if I'd be interested in doing promotions for them. Like, just like very tame, the kind of sexy porn like vibe with just modeling merchandise or doing cutting promos for them. And then it ended up being that I got involved in the storyline as being Schlack's valet. Well, I started off as like Schlack's stalker slash valet, and then my role just kind of exponentially increased. The fans are really receptive to it, which I like was so concerned about being a wrestling fan myself. Like, there, I respect it so much. I didn't want my involvement to seem like it was attention seeking or that I was disrespecting the art or the people involved or the fans. So I'm really just so happy that I was embraced by the wrestling community in the role that I have. And it's just exploded in the last, like, and I've only been involved in the promotion heavily for, like, I'd say 6 months or so. So to go 6 months ago from just being like, here's some t-shirts that I model for you, to, getting color in a crazy death match, it's something that I never expected to do, but it's also now it's changed into something that I just look forward to doing more and more and more of every single time. And I just want to get more physical and be involved more in the storylines. And I love it. I'm obsessed with it. So I'm really happy with the role that I have. It was just completely unexpected. It was never meant to be this way.
But funny how it is in pro wrestling or just anything in general, right? When you never expect it to be anything more than it is, and then it blows up into something
Right.
that's amazing, right? And you said yourself you're a wrestling fan growing up, and so to be part of that type of community is exciting. In terms now, you're a performer. You're actually going in there in the ring now, not only part of the storyline, but you're actually there performing for the audience. You said you're a wrestling fan, right? What were your first recollections of pro wrestling growing up as a kid?
Well, I never, even like as a kid, I wasn't really able to watch it. We weren't allowed to watch it. I only really started getting more into it in the last few years being a fan. So I started, I actually started watching like AEW. I started with I knew about WWE, like Cena in The Rock and Undertaker and the big name guys that I just absolutely love. One of my favorite wrestlers of all time is Mick Foley. So like just watching them and like learning
I
their
knew I
story.
liked you. I knew I liked you from the beginning, and now you're just saying that just proves it. Yep.
And I'm like, he's such a wonderful, wonderful human, but he's just a phenomenal entertainer. And, a lot of the reason why I wanted to do the kind of a match that I did was because of Ric Flair, with my hair and like the whole, like just the visual and like the beauty of it with the blonde hair and just how bloody and like it's just so beautiful to me, like aesthetically, and like just how it looks is just stunning. I love that look. So, and it takes that performance up to like the next level. And being a performer and adult myself, like the crossover, it's like I always say there's like 1 degree of separation between like adult and wrestling because they're so similar. Like there's so many parallels between the two. So, it's definitely more challenging to me, but it's also something that I'm more passionate about, because I genuinely love it. And it's something that I can be proud of with everyone. Like, I can't be like, hey guys, like, do you want to see my new DVD? It's like, but I can show my family this stuff for the most part. And, it's like, it's just something that I hold near and dear to my heart. And the more I get into it, like just having so much love and respect for pro wrestling and the wrestling community, it's like, it just means the world to me to be in it. And I'm a big, like, I love all the documentaries on everybody. Like I said, Dark Side of the Ring, and like even like I think it's what is it, like E does a bunch of I watch like just wrestling documentaries like all
Yeah.
day long. I love them. Like I
Yeah.
absolutely love them. Just the history and getting attached to these people that are just larger than life, true life superheroes. So I love it. Like I was lucky enough to be invited to go to Raw a few weeks ago, and being at Raw and like watching all the fans like just these kids, these are their superheroes, and it's just the coolest thing. Like wrestling is unlike anything else like in the world, and you either get it as a fan or you just don't understand it at all. But we're blessed enough to understand it and just be totally in love with it. So I'm happy.
Did you find the correlation with wrestling being entertainment as well as anything you do? Because you take little bits and pieces from wrestling and you can mix it to, like, we talked to a lot of MMA people, and they kind of, in promo wise and just in character, you kind of, you'd be lying if you say you don't watch wrestling promos, right? To get into that character. Same thing with adult film. You have this presence when you go to events, when you go to signings, when you go to conventions. You're this larger than life figure to a bunch of fans. Do you see the correlation, and has wrestling helped you in other aspects of what you're doing, as far as directing films, as well as starring in them? Do you see the correlation? Can you see it there?
Yeah, and I think that that's why it's so similar too with both worlds, because we are like, even, in the adult community, you're looked at as a celebrity in some sense, like, and which has always been like kind of like a hard concept for me to grasp. But people idolize you in these different ways, and especially in wrestling, like I think it's important too that in both worlds, I think a lot of the reasons we suffer so much emotionally a lot of times, and deal with like substance abuse problems and mental health problems, is because you are that figure and it has so much power and so much like weight attached to it. But at the same time, then people forget at the end of the day that you're a human being and you have a family and you have feelings. And when you're just idolized to that level, like especially like in pro wrestling, like some of the WWE guys, friends of mine, they just are looked at like they're not even human. They're looked at as like gods, and that has its benefits, especially like, that serves your ego in a lot of ways, right? But at the end of the day, you are human, and it's hard to detach your like public persona from your personal life. And I think a lot of times, it goes to people's heads, and that there's a thin line between the character that you are and the human that you are behind closed doors. And a lot of times that line gets blurred, or it carries over into your personal life and you forget who you are, especially when you're treated that way all the time. So it's an interesting like psychology between wrestling and adult too, of the people that are the performers in both arts. So but it's relatable on both fronts, being in both industries. That's why I think, wrestling, I relate to it so much too, because I understand what they're going through, and, they're performance artists just as I am, but then you're elevated to a pedestal that's just like out of this world. So it's interesting to try to deal with that, and, mentally and emotionally making sure that you're taking care of yourself too. And a lot of times, people get caught up in this, unfortunately.
No, you're right. I mean, geez, you basically took the words right out of my mouth in terms of everything you were saying. I was completely agreeing with, just because through my experience of Jeff and I going through the pro wrestling circuit, seeing these individuals that we've admired for so much, and then seeing them more from a human aspect of it, and then me starting off, covering the adult film industry, and then seeing these individuals for, I guess my mindset was different. I saw them for what they were. They were human beings, kind of similar, patterning myself to wrestling, where they're these larger than life figures. And in terms of the adult film industry, they're these gigantic fantasies for individuals
Mhm.
you have this huge loyalty to. And something I would ask the performers, and in terms of people in that industry, or just in general, when you create, I mean, in all honesty, and some of the greats have said it before too, sometimes your greatest characters per se are just extensions of yourself with the volume turned up really high. And
Mhm.
in scenario two, like you just talked about too, sometimes there is a fine line there. For you, has it been a difficult situation where you've not necessarily been able to separate it, but being able to kind of, when you're at work, and when you're off, you're off? Because as you said before, some of these individuals have to have their quote unquote gimmick 24/7. I can only imagine how emotionally frustrating that might be.
Yeah, I have always been, or tried to been, to for the most part, um as authentic as possible with, I think that's why, I have a really wonderful fan base both in wrestling and in adult, obviously, is a much larger scale. But I've always tried to represent myself as me, as myself. I share things about my personal life that a lot of people just think I'm absolutely crazy for doing. Because, and I understand why people don't. They reserve that part. It's like their sacred space that no one can take away from you, and you are completely different. It's black and white difference between who you really are and then yourself as a performer. But for me, I think that's why it is difficult. Like the line gets blurred a lot with me because for the most part, what you see is what you get. Obviously, at my elevated performances, like because I am ultimately a performer, some of these things are literally just performance based. But, you know, as far as my public persona, I'm very much that person in private life as well. So it is hard. And I've had mentors and, handlers and managers and other people that have been concerned about me getting lost in a lot of this stuff because um I attach so much of my real self to it that can be problematic too, because it is almost better to have a persona that's completely detached because it's like it's safer. You can actually turn it off, go to work, go home. As difficult as it is when you're like, oh, people only see me this way, but it's also a protective mechanism where when you're actually being yourself, you're more vulnerable because you're putting out your personal life that actually is real and it's personal. So when you get attacks or, people come at you in different ways, it's you take it personally because now you don't have your persona to kind of push those things onto and like compartmentalize or separate it. Now it's like, oh, well, I am myself. They hate me as a person, like, and this is who I am as a person. So it has its challenges in both respects. I don't know which one is worse or like which one's better. I'm very happy with the situation that I have and the career I have, and I'm happy and lucky that it's been so well received in both fronts. But I operate a certain way and it works for me. It wouldn't work for other people, but ultimately I think it's been pretty good. It has its challenges. Like I've gone through a lot of public emotional things, but it's human, and that's the whole platform that I operate on is trying to humanize the adult industry, as well as wrestling, as well as anything. Like, at the end of the day, we're just existing in people's minds for their consumption, and they forget that we're actually human beings. And a lot of this stuff takes a really heavy emotional toll on you. So I think it's just important for people to remember at the end of the day, like we can be your superheroes, but your superheroes are still human at the end of the day.
Wow, I'll
That's
tell
very
you what,
true.
Trendsetter Misha is so very well spoken here. I very much respect you here. You really seem like,
And I can relate to you,
yeah,
because I have to be the trendsetter 24/7. It's not easy. It's not
I
easy.
can't separate. I can't separate.
I can't. I'm not allowed to, especially with the mustache now.
yeah.
I can't let it go.
So, is it refreshing to you now that, for example, we've seen your YouTube interviews and we've seen other stuff? Is it refreshing to be talking about wrestling and have something else to talk about and something else that's mainstream? So, my question is it refreshing? And what is the current like? Are you keeping up with the product now? You mentioned AEW a little bit. Like, are you watching? You went to Raw. Are you watching the product a little bit more consistent now that you're a little bit more in it?
You know, to answer both of those questions, like I definitely watch AEW and WWE almost more religiously now, and wrestling, has become even more important to me than adult in a lot of ways, which I think is confusing people too, like confusing some of my fans too, because I'm pushing wrestling so much. But it's also like that's what makes me happy. I'm so happy to be doing it, and it is a performance too that I get to creatively express myself, and it's fun for me. But I do keep up. I have friends in WWE, and I love watching AEW, so I catch up on all the drama. I listen to wrestling podcasts. I listen to Cornette. um
Nice.
I love it. Like I'm heavily involved in the community, and that's why like I want to keep expanding my knowledge of it as well. And it's a fascination as well as like a passion for me too. And I also feel like I'm in that community, and as much as I loved it before, it's almost like I have to do my due diligence and like be up on what's happening in our community, even if they're not connected necessarily. In some ways, they are, especially with my WWE connection, is talked about every once in a while. So it's like I have to, for my own sake, like be well versed in what's happening in the wrestling community, and I love it. Like, and so I think it becomes more consuming at that point too. Like, the more it elevates and my position elevates in XPW, the more I'm drawn to like more. I want to know more. I want to see more. I want to watch more. What's happening, with CM Punk? Like, all these different things. Like, so it does. It elevates. I think it's kind of like it's just escalating at this pace that I'm keeping up with and being more involved in. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see like where it goes from here too. Because I think people have noticed that I'm putting a lot more of my time and energy, especially public energy, into wrestling more so than even adult at this point. But it helps me creatively too with directing, and I write and produce and perform, and I have a lot of creative control. I'm thankful for that in the company that I run and work for. So it kind of goes hand in hand, like, but it's nice because it is my like escape from adult too, and it's nice
Yeah.
being in that community and not just so adult based, like you're saying. Oh my god, you're not going to ask me what my favorite position is, like I you know
Oh yeah, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
No.
yeah, it's like in
Yeah.
every, I've
Yeah.
gotten kind of like, I've gotten to the point with those. I've never really liked to be interviewed that way anyway, because I'm so
Mhm.
like big on pushing the human agenda in
Mhm.
an adult. But it's like, there's nothing I hate worse than being asked like these just stupid questions. Like, I'd way rather talk about wrestling because it's a passion of mine too. Not saying that adult is not, but
True, but
It's a
those
new
types of
passion.
yeah.
It's a new venture that you obviously have put 100% effort into it, and I'm glad
yeah,
that you're tuning into the game because wrestling fans. One thing about wrestling fans is that they'll spot a phony when they see one. So when you get tested, and you can't, besides WrestleMania, what's your favorite WrestleMania event? And you just say like something like Andre and Hogan. Of course, Andre and Hogan. But if you say like a Steamboat and Macho Man or something like that, then they'll know that you're one of us and stuff
one
like
of
that. Is
that. That's
yeah.
it. And wrestling fans, comparatively to like, I thought like adult fans were like so obsessive in a good way, and involved, and like they worship you and adore you, and they're very like loyal. But wrestling fans are a whole different caliber of fan. Like, the best fans that I have honestly are wrestling fans. Like, it's like a cult, like, following, which I love. Like, I'm so grateful, like I said before, being accepted into that community, because I knew that, going into it, like, they're rabid. If you make a mistake, or you come off as inauthentic, or even if you're like a heel, or they're rabid. They will take you down. But then also, in the same breath, if they love you with their whole heart. Like, that's why I love it so much, because it's not just like watching a movie and going home. Like, they're living and breathing this life. Like, they're obsessive about it in such a beautiful way. Like, the relationship between performing and wrestling and the fans is unlike anything that I've ever seen. And especially even in pro sports. Like, you can love your football team, but there's such a personal element, because it's not like a team, it's an individual. Um, and the character, and you learn about them and their life, and there's such a strong attachment there that you don't get in anything else. And it's like, it's so beautiful. Like, I love the fans. I actually, and going into it and being well received and getting more involved, and people are getting to know me, and when I go to events, and it's like you see the same fans, and they're just such wonderful people, and I love meeting the fans. But I actually got a little bit of backlash from doing this match last weekend, because of the capacity that I was in. No one really expected that, and I think like when it's so unexpected, it was a little bit offensive to some people, because, and I, again, that's not my intention. I wanted to do it to show how serious I am about it. And I didn't really think about the alternative where it's like, oh, maybe now she's just like trying too hard. Is she going to be a deathmatch wrestler now? She's not even trained. Like, this is offensive, and that was what I was concerned about from the beginning. So, and I didn't get a lot of it, but I did hear it from a few people that were like, we love you how you are in the role that you are, and you're not a pro wrestler. So, like, you kind of jumping like way from ground zero basically up here to this level is kind of shocking to them. And in some ways I think it irked them a little bit, but I want them to see that I'm not doing it out of disrespect for wrestling or for the promotion or for them and their feelings and their attachments. I do it because I want to just showcase how passionate I am about it and how much I love and respect it as an art. And I want to do it correctly. And everything, even that match, I was like dreading. I get so nervous, doing stuff like that, because it is, at the end of the day, it's about the fans. Like, I do it because I love it, but I do it for them. So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes from here, because that's what everyone's like, okay, you jump to this level, what now? Are you going to do chainsaws? Or are you going to do ladder matches? Like, like you're going to stick a fork
Well,
through.
hopefully not, in a sense, because we want to see you healthy and not injured.
Yeah, we want to have you back here on the show, and not have you in traction or anything like that,
Of course, yeah.
I,
That would be bad for
know,
business.
I don't want to do it. Like, it wasn't something that I planned on just like, hey, we're jumping here, and then now we're just like balls to the wall all the time from here on out. It was kind of like, this is what we can do. It's kind of a showcase, fun thing to do. And I think we're going to, regress a little bit back into our roles. Like, and obviously, as it comes, get involved here and there as we are. But I don't know where we're going to go from here. And, it's something that people were cautious about doing something like that so soon in the storyline, too. Like, you just jump to this crazy level, like, and people are going to be expecting you to top it. So, and that's
Yeah,
not.
in those same respects, Misha, though, like where your level is or where you go really just depends on you. I'm sure you hear this a lot anywhere you go to, especially in the adult film industry. You're not going to please anybody. You're not going to please
Right,
everyone. So
right.
it's really depends on your niche and what you want to do, and if getting in the ring more frequently from what your original role was with XPW is something you want to do it. I
Do
mean,
it.
you're always
And
gonna have those people who be like, no, we like you better as a valet. Okay, great. I do that also.
sorry.
And also I'm in the ring too. So from time to time. So
right,
yeah,
John
so,
Center? It's about paying your dues, right? It's about
well, not just paying your dues too, Jeff, but it's also about, just doing stuff you like,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
we did this, and Jeff and I had to pay our dues because, people were like, when I first walked in, I told this to Jeff when we were doing Exotica. First walked in, nobody knew who I was.
Well,
So it's like
yeah,
starting from square one. You have to kind of reintroduce yourself, and hopefully you present yourself well enough where, like, I'm sure people who saw what Jeff and I were doing with pro wrestling were like, why are you guys doing stuff on YouTube for the adult film industry? Well, interesting enough, there's a nice correlation in between that a lot of people
all
don't
entertainment.
recognize. It's
It's
all
all entertainment.
entertainment in terms
yeah.
of that and advertising yourself and promoting yourself. I mean, and the hard work that goes in behind the scenes. Jeff and I love watching pro wrestling, but then we became more intrigued on the behind the scenes stuff. How's it all get put together? How does it all become organized where, the backstories behind it? It's always more interesting than the actual thing that happened.
I agree. I agree too. There's so much more. The real entertainment, the meat of the entertainment, is behind the scenes. That's why I love Dark Side so much, and like the interest of the documentaries where you're like, look at how much went into this. You see the final product, but which is beautiful. A lot of, especially like historic matches and all these different things, but the real story is the foundation and how it grew, and who these people are and what it took to get to that point. So, and with you guys, crossing into adult, it's like you enjoy it. It's something that's entertainment. And like, it's, like we've talked about, there is like such a similarity between the two worlds. It would make sense to be in both. And, Rob was kind of the pioneer in like discovering that link between adult and wrestling, where it makes sense. If you really think about it, you're like, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. But again, you have to understand adult as a business and who the people are in adult, and that it's a performance and it's a fantasy, just like wrestling, where I think it's hard for people when they're so attached to the fantasy. Those things that are more important they don't even want to know because they're so obsessed about the fantasy. They don't want to know about people's like drinking problems or marital problems or their kids or, it's like you're in their mind, they want you to strictly be a fantasy and stay in that little bubble when that's not realistic. Plus, like, it's so much more interesting and it adds so much more, like, I would assume, like, weight and attachment to someone if they are seen as like a relatable human or a likable human or someone that be like, oh, you know what, like I have the same issues, they're humans just like me, I like them because they're like me. But again, I think it goes back to that psychology where people are looking for a hero, they're looking for an escape, they want the fantasy. So I understand and respect that too, as long as it's respected at the end of the day. And for the most part I think it is, but it's just fascinating to see people's relationships with you when you're elevated to that level. So it's an interesting experience in both realms for sure. I'm sure you guys have seen it in both worlds too, how interesting it is.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
mind's been opened completely when it's been in both worlds, obviously, knowing the certain things. But one thing that I've always prided myself on, and Jeff as well, is too, is that we treat it with that level of respect all the time. It was like we're not individuals looking for like the story, to break the story and to spread rumors around. It's more of kind of just dissecting and analyzing. Okay, well, we don't like this storyline that's going on right now on Raw, for example. Okay, it's very easy to bash and say, "Oh, I hate it. It's stupid. It's Vince's fault." It's not Vince's fault anymore. He's not part of WWE anymore, as they say. But how can we make it better? What? All right, we don't get it. We don't understand it. Let's try to understand it. How would we do it? And can it get better? Can it progress into something more interesting? But again, I always compare this to Baskin Robbins. You have 31 flavors to choose from. I know Jeff hates me saying that, but I don't really
Oh, I
care what
love
Jeff
it. You can
says.
use it. You can use it all the time.
But it's true. Anytime, anything. If you don't like a particular thing, great. If you don't like WWE, hey, head over to AEW. Hey,
Right.
if Ring of Honor ever comes back full time, go over to Ring of Honor. Go to New Japan. Go to
XPW.
Impact. XPW. You have all these levels of things to watch to entertain yourself. Similar to adult film industry too. There's certain genres that people like. So hey, certain types of girls, certain types of guys, anything to fulfill your need to be entertained, it's available to you. So yeah, definitely would agree with that statement.
No, it's interesting. That's really interesting too, because it's true. Like people, it's almost like they want to be entertained, just like like I'm not entertained by this today, and they're so quick to just dismiss it if it's not exactly what they were hoping for. But you said, I mean, I don't know how you could even be attached to every single storyline anyway, because they're so like all across the board. It's so different. Like you've got love stories, if that's your thing, you have like the stoner thing and these warriors and the larger than life superhero humans that don't even look like they're human, and but then you have the guy next door in his jeans. So all those different genres in wrestling, and then obviously in adults as well, like yeah, you're never going to please every single person. So it's like I think even if it's something that you're not personally attached to or don't find it overly, entertaining, it's still like a respectable art too. Like the amount of energy and time and all these things that go into making these storylines, like I still respect storylines that I'm not overly fond of either, but to someone else, like that's their thing. They love that. They worship that idea and those people. So, I think just having respect for everybody that is an artist in this is important too.
I'm a huge right now storyline wise. I'm a huge like with the bloodline angle with what's going on
Yeah.
with Reigns and Sami Zayn, and he's that. I mean, he's been so good. Obviously, that's somebody that's finally getting their due respect. Right?
The
It's been
honorary use.
the honorary Oos, man. Just all that he's doing there, and just with the turmoil, and a couple weeks ago when Roman almost told him, what are you doing with that shirt, and to see Sammy's reaction, you see the crowd pulling.
Yeah.
His reaction, the crowd's reaction,
Then when
Yeah.
this all actually turns, right? And I know everybody wants that instant gratification, right? They want, when's this going to happen? When's Sammy going to turn? When are they going to turn on Sammy? When's Sammy going to fight? Like, we don't have that patience, right? We just want that in. But let me tell you, that's my favorite storyline right now with the bloodline, and I just get into it, and it's really awesome. What are your thoughts about that storyline?
I actually really like it a lot. That moment with the turn has been like what's the word, like played out for so
Mhm.
long, like where it's been built up and built up and but like you said, everybody wants like that instant gratification, but you don't even realize like even like a subtle moment like that too. It's so huge, it has so much impact, but you have to build that to get there, like and having different people are like questioning, is this actually going to happen? When's it going to happen? You assume it's going to happen. But you have to build it up to make it an explosive thing, even if it doesn't feel like it in some ways too, I liked I love the bloodline storyline, but like with the Dominic storyline with Mysterio and him, turning on his dad, people hate that storyline. And I mean, Dominic, it's kind of questionable too. Like, I don't think Dominic is the best wrestler in the world, which I think a lot
That
of people.
mullet has so much heat.
Yeah,
That
so,
mullet has so much heat. Like I literally want to see that thing get shaved off because
but
and
it's
again he's
that.
got that heat. He's got that heat. He's got it. As soon as he doesn't have to say a word, and people are booing him out of the building.
But that right there too is like, okay, so you take somebody who everybody's like, well, this guy's like entitled because he only got a push because of his dad, you
Yeah.
know, and similarly, even like with Taz, like in AEW, I'm like, or not with Taz and
Hook. I mean. Hook.
with
Hook.
that
Yeah.
Hook,
Yeah.
yeah, with Taz and Hook. I totally just forgot his name. Um, that whole thing where it's like, are they really like the best wrestlers in the world? Like, no, but like with what WWE did with that situation, you take Dominic and make him just the ultimate heel. It's like, there you go, like, and it's a beautiful, beautiful story. Like, even if people are like, well, this is shit, it's like, is it though? Because you hate it, like
Doesn't
that
mean it's
was,
that way for somebody else. Other people really like it. It's
And
doing
Rhea
really popular.
Ripley
they
can
love
buy
it.
some
Oh,
anytime.
uh, Rhea Ripley is one of my favorite female wrestlers. Like, she is such a fucking monster. Like, see that to me too. Like, watching her, I love her whole like, she's very like masculine and like proud of it, and like, I'm a badass, I'm a bodyguard. Kind of like the old China-ish vibe.
Yes.
And where a lot of, I hate it when they take like these girls like Ty Conte, like is not my favorite in the world. Like, and she, I don't think is she should be in the position she's in, but now she's got the relationship with Sammy, and that's pushed like disgustingly hard. And it's like, like you look at somebody like that, it was like, okay, she's this hot little chick. Like, obviously she has a really good background in martial arts, but it's like, I like the figures like Rhea Ripper, and all these different girls that are actually like buff and like, they're athletes, where it's like you take the pretty hot chick that's an Instagram model and throw her in there, and then it's like, I don't know. I mean, it appeals to, so again, like certain
Yeah.
preferences, but it's like,
I mean, I'll just throw an example out there. Mandy Rose was known as a Barbie, and then she changed, went down to NXT, and although she still puts a lot of emphasis on her looks, though, I have to admit I'm pretty happy with see Mandy's transformation. Where yes, of course, she's very good looking, she's beautiful, but she's in there
She's a
putting in the work.
badass.
She's a
right,
badass. She's not like
exactly.
an Eva Marie where she's just depending on her looks to get her somewhere.
No, I agree with that too. Or even like, a Charlotte Flair situation. Charlotte Flair is the greatest female wrestler ever, potentially, and she's gorgeous, stunning, and she does, like her dad's whole gimmick, but like she can back that shit up
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So, you don't have to be, I think some people, settle into that, like, I'm the pretty one that doesn't really have to have all of my technical training on point, or I don't have to be the best on the mic, but the girls, I think that's the difference though between people being like legendary and people just existing in that world too. Like, do you want to be a legend, or do you want to just be like a part of it? That's the distinction, I think, too.
Yeah, and I did not want to. We could talk like wrestling all day. We could do this like
I love
just,
it. Like,
just
I
chill,
love it.
just chill.
If you had shown up to Exotica, I mean, we're hanging out with Rob Van Dam. If you had shown up to Exotica, we would have been talking wrestling
We've just been
24/7. There's
Oh,
no
I
way
know.
I
Yeah,
could get any
and I
interviews out there.
go. The reason I was actually set to appear.
Yeah.
And I ended up just being like, this is just like too much to try to break all to do both, because I would have been there for like 2 days, and then my original plan was to fly back at 5 a.m. East Coast time to LA, get into LA at 9 a.m., and then drive out to Pomona and wrestle till 2 or 3 in the morning. And it's
Yeah.
like, that doesn't make any sense. Like at the
Yeah.
end of the day,
Yeah.
it's like, but then there's a pick and choose right there too, because it's
You
like,
chose wrestling.
here's that, and I chose, to, because
Wrestling.
my fear was I would have been devastated if something happened with the flight, or God forbid I missed it, or I was too tired, or like then my performance was lacking. Like I didn't want to risk it.
Guys,
Believe me, your
guys,
priorities were in the right
she
place.
didn't
Misha.
want. She didn't want to miss the town. That's enough to love this woman. She didn't want to miss the town. That is awesome. And we can't like not talk about your other ventures too, because this is we want to like also congratulate you too on Orange is the New Ink too. I know you were doing your directorial debut for this, and so talk about that too, because that's also another great achievement that you've had this past year.
Thank you. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I'm very blessed, and like it's hard to believe, sometimes it's kind of surreal. Like I forget that I've accomplished what I've accomplished. Like I'm very humbly grateful for it, but like sometimes I'm just like, oh yeah, that's right. I have done quite a bit this year. My first directorial series, I'm the only in-house female director for Ultrarotic. I got to do Glam Guns as my original series. It was nominated last year. We just put the second one out. We'll see what happens with nominations. So this is my third project, but it's the second series. It's the newest series. And I wanted to do, a really kind of serious, dramatic, dark series. It's a prison series. And I want it to be dark and weird, and but almost like an emotional connection, like where it's showcasing like where people are human. Obviously there's like fantastic, amazing, sex scenes in it, because that's the whole point. But I really wanted to do something that was important to me as a writer, especially as a female writer, to create something that actually had some purpose potentially in it too. Like, and people think that's so ridiculous. They're like, it's porn, no one cares. Like, but they do at some point too. And even if they don't, it's something that I'm putting my name on. I want it to be something that's a representation of like my mind and my art. And it is like in a way for me to creatively express, things I've experienced in my own life. And I wrote it too with, all these different characters that have all these different secrets and have committed all these different crimes, and why have they committed them. It's also going to be the first series, and this company's been around for about 14 years. It'll be the first series that incorporates gay, male gay, and trans scenes as well. So it's a really exciting project. It's going to be crazy, like the storylines that I've been writing, we're shooting again. I'd like to have a good, honestly, chunk of it done for the movie aspect of it by the end of the year. But it's hefty. Like, it's not just the prison scenes, like these wild, like inmate scenes. It's also, I'm adding backstory scenes to it as well. So it's going to have like an interesting vibe with it. But I'm very happy about it. It was like I've been working on this project for a year. I finally got it approved after much like, convincing, begging, like, I'm telling you guys, it's going to be good. And they finally came around and decided to give me the green light to do it. So I'm very, very, very happy and excited for that.
Well, Misha, I
That
have
is
to
awesome.
say personally, though, to see the enthusiasm and the look on your face when you're talking about this current project you're directing, what you're going to do here, we talk about wrestling and the stuff you're doing there, I can just see right now the creative juices are flowing right there. There's the wheels are turning of all these things you want to do,
Very
and
inspirational.
it's very
too.
inspirational. It's great, but just talking to you for a few minutes, and like I said, Jeff and I, we could talk to you for hours and hours. Honestly, if there's an open bar somewhere, we'd be talking about wrestling 24/7,
Yeah,
our favorite matches
seriously.
and stuff like that. But unfortunately, the time does not allow us to do that, unfortunately. But I can easily tell that you're a very driven person. You're very committed to the things you're doing, and whatever it is that you just decide to do. So when I see individuals like yourself that are just like so goal driven, you even say it yourself too, like, wow, I have done quite a lot. When you had to think about it, like, wow, I have done quite a lot this year towards the tail end of the year as well. So with all that, for individuals like that, I always ask them the question too. Like it's very easy sometimes to get lost in a goal-driven world where you're always worrying about what the next thing is, right? Hey, I'm victim to it as well. I'm always like, what's the next thing I have to do? What's the next thing I have to do? And to enjoy the time. I even mentioned this early on too, that what we did in Exotica, right? It's stressful. It's a good kind of stress. And then at the end, I'm like, you know what? I can sit back and like, I actually feel like I did a really good job. I did
Yeah,
a
like
lot of good
accomplishment.
stuff.
Yeah.
I accomplished something. Have you allowed yourself now, more importantly than ever before, to have the ability to enjoy that ride rather than worry so much about the end all journey?
That's a really good question, actually. It's hard for me, I think, to acknowledge it a lot of the times. One, because uh, I get so caught up in, like you said, like the next thing, or like there's so many like moving parts in my life. Obviously, like between wrestling and adult, and then I do a lot of I have mainstream projects I'm working on, and my family situation, and recovering from the stroke, and doing all, like, I kind of get overwhelmed in it, like it's like a tornado of stuff. But I also, I think it's good in some ways because it's not ego driven. I would never consider myself like an ego driven person. So when I do like I have actually accomplished a lot, and like, I sit down and when people actually go, wow, in your first year in adult, you were nominated 17 times in a year. Like, and I don't really like internalize that. To me, I'm like, you know, driving, like, what can I do next year to do better, to do, all these things. It's like you should sit back and like be like, you know what, you've done great things and accomplished a lot. Like, I don't think that that's a bad thing either. And I think it is, important to be reminded of the things that you've done. And it's kind of a perspective check too, right? When you're like, okay, calm down a little bit. Like, you've done a lot. Like, cause I get really like disappointed, I guess, when things don't work out, or like it's not going the right way, or I feel like unaccomplished. And it's like, okay, hold on. Like, you
Hmm.
have done really well, like in ways that other people probably will never even imagine having, the successes that you've had. So I don't do it as much as I should, to answer your question, but I think it is important to sit back and be like, it's okay to enjoy some of the successes that you've had, and be proud of yourself and feel accomplished too.
Especially what a year makes, you know what I mean? What a year, what a turnaround, right? Because
Yeah.
obviously you talked about the stroke, and I believe people have known the story now, and it's very inspirational too. Because look where you're at right now to last year, and
Oh,
it's inspirational. So yeah, you have to get that story out there too, and
Mhm.
be somebody that people can relate to, and also be like, hey, if she can do it, I can do it, right? And I can, the sun will come out tomorrow, right? And it's very inspirational in your story. But we wanted to talk about, again, like the wrestling aspect and all your goals forward, because again, this is to motivate people and to have people be like, wow, you know what, we know her backstory, but now these are all her accomplishments and what she's doing now in wrestling too, so that that's great. And you've got also November 12th, you will be in Jersey, hopefully, fingers
well,
crossed.
yes.
XPW comes to Newark, New Jersey, for Invasion at the Heart Ballroom on November the 12th. And just talk about that, because you didn't make it to Edison, but you're gonna get a chance to come to New Jersey and be here for that event. Just talk about that and promote that a little bit.
Yeah, you guys will have to come if you can too.
Yeah, most
It's
definitely.
I'm RSVPing.
Yeah,
Yes.
VIP tickets for sure.
Huh.
I went back and forth with it for a little while too, because one, my schedule is like insanely chaotic without wrestling in it. And that's the thing too, is the more involved you get into it, and the more these shows are going to be happening all over the country. Like, Rob wants to take it on a tour, essentially. So I'm kind of, in my mind, I was like, is this something that I should be dedicating myself into so fully? Like, and that's a huge decision to make. Like, are you going to be a part of this or not? And I thought about Jersey, and I was like, well, maybe I'll, sit that one out. And I was like, nah, you know, I was like, no, it's important for me to be there too, like, especially for the sake of storyline and the sake of the fans, like, and not even like, because it's difficult for me to make that trip, I'm not gonna lie, like, it's gonna be difficult for me to do, but it's done. I made the ultimate decision to go a couple weeks ago, and I was kind of in and out. That's why, like, I'm not even promoted as going yet,
Yeah.
because they're like, I don't, we don't want to commit to promotion if you're not going. But I decided to go. It's going to be great. Schrock is wrestling a Drake, and it's going to, Drake's a controversial figure. Schrock, in a way, is a controversial figure too.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like, here's the battle of the controversial, like, tycoons here, and I'm excited for it. I'm actually really excited to see because the East Coast crowd completely different from West Coast crowd. They have no, like, a lot of them, don't know who I am, have never met me in person.
Yeah.
And they're East Coast fans way more diehard, in my opinion, in a lot of ways than the West Coast. Like, 'cause
Mhm.
East Coast wrestling is so much bigger in a sense, or like accessible in ways that it's not on the West Coast. So, and also, there's some interesting feuds with rival promotions on the East Coast that are very
Yeah.
to us.
CW
Um,
territory.
so yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's a,
Jeff said it. You did it. Hmm.
that's a story for another time. A huge and it's been revived, that rivalry, in a lot of ways. So it was kind of like I was a little bit concerned about going in some sense, because I'm like, I don't know, with the history of some of these things, I'm like, something could happen. It could be a safety thing, and I'm like, you know what? If something happens, I hope it doesn't. But like, if it does, like, I'd rather be there than not either.
Yeah, some great stories. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, in XPW, it's like,
Spoken like a true performer there. If something's gonna
yeah,
happen, at least I'm there for it.
I want to
Exactly.
be there. Like, I'm getting there too. Like. So no, I'm excited to expand. I think that was a big move too, as far as like pursuing wrestling so much, further, is like getting into, now you have a whole new fan base, a new, like, and I mean, they're the same, XPW fans are XPW fans, like, they're amazing across the board, but getting to meet people that they didn't come out to LA to meet us.
Mhm.
They haven't seen the West Coast crew yet, so I'm curious to see, like, how it goes, and I wanted to be a part of it, and this just expands my role into, solidifying how serious I am about being a part of this promotion too. So I think it was important for me to ultimately decide to go.
Well, congratulations, Misha. Misha, you sold me
Thank
in the building. You sold me in the building.
Yeah, looking
You
forward
sold
to
Aw,
me
that.
a ticket, and
No,
that's the true art of a wrestling performer. You sold a ticket right then and
there
there,
you
right?
go. There you go. She
thank-
plugged the event and she got two people to RSVP. So looking
Yay!
forward to that. XPW Wrestling presents Extreme Invasion Heart Ballroom in Newark, New Jersey. We're just a hop step and a skip away from there, anyways. So, looking forward to that. And of course, man, she has done so much. Of course, wrestled for XPW this past weekend. She is also directing All Erotics Orange is the New Ink. She's got more projects coming along the way, and she is now HSP's Ravishing Russian. She is Misha Montana. Listen, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the time that you've given us, and we hope to have you back on soon. And definitely look forward to meeting you in a few weeks.
Sounds great, you guys. Thank you so much for having me. This is the best conversation. I just love it. So thanks for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, truly.
You're always welcome back on the show. Definitely, you have two fans right here. So thank you very much for all your time.
Great. Thank you so much, you guys.